Coming up on New Day at Arirang, South Korea projected to see yet another day with well over 50,000 new cases of COVID-19 as Omicron continues to tear across the country. Experts forecast the situation to get a lot worse before it gets better as well, predicting over 200,000 new infections a day by next month. Bad news for Biden. U.S. consumer prices soar an eye-watering 7.5% in January, the fastest annual pace since 1982. The news adding pressure on the Federal Reserve to aggressively tighten its monetary policy. Plus, South Korea, the United States and Japan to hold high-level talks on how to bring North Korea back to talks and to cool rising tensions on the peninsula. This meeting coming hot on the heels of the regime test firing 7 missiles last month alone.
Hello and welcome to this Friday edition of New Day at Arirang. It's 8 a.m. February 11th here in Seoul, South Korea. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kim Mo-kyan.
And I'm Mark Broom. Over the next hour, we will be taking a look at the biggest news stories of the day and get expert insights on the issues facing Korea and the world. We start, though, with the COVID-19 situation. South Korea set to see new cases of the virus top the 50,000 mark once again on this Friday, and experts are forecasting even more infections to come, possibly peaking sometime in March.
This comes as the country is ramping up efforts not only in treatment but also on the vaccination front. For more on this, we have our reporter Choi Min-jung here in the studio with us. Good morning, Min-jung.
Good morning.
So we hear that the total cases today is also going to be high.
Right, Mo-kyan, we're expecting to see up to or above 55,000 cases for today. This comes as South Korea already saw almost 50,000 cases from midnight to 9 p.m. Thursday. This is up by around 1,200 cases from the day before, and yet another all-time high for this time period. A medical expert in disease prevention said that cases will eventually top 200,000 per day and will maintain a peak throughout March. But at the same time, the expert also hinted that this may be the last hurdle of the pandemic. Meanwhile, as cases soar, authorities said they will be discussing updating social distancing measures as they are due to expire on the 20th of this month. Officials said they are considering extending the deadline once again, but perhaps with eased restrictions. They will also discuss what to do regarding vaccine pass mandates once current social distancing rules end next week.
And changes have been made on how people infected with COVID-19 are treated at home. Do we know how many medical institutions are looking after all these people?
Right. As of Thursday, there are some 2,400 medical institutions providing virtual treatment and prescriptions over the phone. Among them, 1,900 are neighborhood hospitals and clinics, while almost 400 are hospitals, and the rest are 24-hour hotlines. Although the number of institutions participating in the service is increasing, there are still discrepancies across different regions. Medical centers that provide virtual treatment and prescriptions for those in the regular management group are mostly concentrated in the Greater Seoul area with some 1,200 facilities. However, regions like Busan, Jeju, and Chungcheongnam-do province have fewer than 100 per region, and Sejong City only 6. There are also more than 200 hospitals looking after those at higher risk in the capital region, but only 1 each in Jeollabuk-do province and Jeju. But on the other hand, the capital region only has 2 24-hour hotlines, while regions outside the capital like Gyeongsangnam-do province have more than 40. Officials say that the number of participating medical institutions will increase, and there are currently enough to manage more than 1.3 million people. As of Thursday, the number of people recovering from home topped 170,000.
And Min-jung, we hear that authorities are set to distribute antigen test kits to those considered vulnerable.
Right, Morgan. The government has decided to provide the kits to students and workers at preschools as well as those in senior care facilities. Beginning the 21st, enough rapid antigen test kits for 1 or 2 tests per week will be distributed to some 2.1 million people. These people were selected as authorities say they could be easily exposed to the virus based on the time they spend in groups. Once the supply of test kits increases from next month, pregnant women may also become eligible to receive the free kits. This comes as around 70 million kits will be supplied this month and around 190 million in March. And to prevent the kits from being sold at irregular prices, the government has decided to ban online sales of the kits from Monday, and offline sales will be limited to pharmacies and convenience stores.
And finally, before we let you go, the COVID-19 vaccine produced by Novavax is now being distributed around South Korea. When exactly can people start applying to get this particular shot?
Right, Mark. Starting next Monday, the vaccine will be administered first to those at higher risk and unvaccinated people over 18. High-risk inpatients and seniors at nursing hospitals will be getting shots at the facilities they are being treated in. Other adults who haven't been vaccinated can get jabbed from Monday as well if they are able to reserve leftovers. Otherwise, reservations will begin on the 21st and they will start getting the vaccine on March 7th. People who haven't had a booster shot due to side effects from the first 2 doses are also eligible to get a booster Novavax vaccine, but they will need a confirmation from a doctor. Meanwhile, another 294,000 doses will be distributed today.
All right, Min-jung, thank you so much for your report. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As always, moving on, a parliamentary committee here in South Korea is looking to allow people infected with COVID-19 to cast ballots in person on March 9th. That is the day of the country's presidential election.
The bill will be put for a full floor vote next week. Our political correspondent Lee Kyung-in reports.
National Assembly Special Committee on Political Reform on Thursday approved a bill to extend voting time to 7:30 p.m. from the current 6 p.m. During that extra 1 hour and a half, those infected with COVID-19 will be able to cast their ballots in person. Currently on Election Day, voting is possible for those in self-isolation, but only for those who did not test positive. They can cast their ballots after regular voting ends at 6 p.m. for 1 hour until 7 p.m. Those infected are not eligible due to the mandatory 7-day self-isolation rule. The problem is, with the country's daily infections expected to top 170,000 by next month, nearly 500,000 people could potentially find themselves unable to vote. To prevent that from happening, both the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition People Power Party had called for parliamentary efforts.
I call for bipartisan efforts to come up with a measure to ensure the voting rights for those under self-isolation, both infected and not infected.
Voting is the most sacred of rights. We must swiftly come up with a measure that people can trust.
The two parties initially suggested extending voting to 9 p.m., but it was revised to 7:30 p.m. in a compromise with the National Election Commission, which said the current 1-hour extension till 7 p.m. will be enough for all those in self-isolation, infected and non-infected. The finalized bill will now be submitted to a plenary session for a vote and will likely be passed without controversy. Lee Kyung-in, Arirang News.
South Korea's 4 major presidential candidates will hold their second televised debate this evening. Taking to the stage will be Lee Jae-myung of the ruling Democratic Party, Yoon Suk-yeol of the main opposition People Power Party, An Chol-soo of the minor opposition People's Party, and Shim Sang-jung of the minor Progressive Justice Party. The second debate will begin at 8 p.m. Korea time, the last 2 hours. They are expected to discuss issues such as youth policy and COVID-19 response measures.
Now, following a series of missile tests by North Korea, the nuclear envoys of South Korea, the US and Japan will sit down in the coming hours, talks in Hawaii. Joining the meeting are South Korea's No Kyu-duk, his American counterpart Sung Kim, and Japan's Takehiro Funakoshi. No will also hold bilateral meetings separately with his US and Japanese counterparts. The agenda includes the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and ways to resume dialogue with the regime. They're likely to focus on fine-tuning the agenda for the foreign ministerial meeting. That's going to be happening also in Hawaii on Saturday local time. Earlier, No said the meetings come at a crucial time for the Korean Peninsula. Recently, North Korea has signaled possibly resuming its nuclear and ICBM tests. With just 3 months to go before he leaves office, President Moon Jae-in has again stressed South Korea is willing to hold talks with North Korea without any preconditions. However, he admitted the outcome of the March election could be a factor in whether such events could be possible before he departs the Blue House. Kim Dami with this report.
President Moon Jae-in says Seoul is willing to hold an inter-Korean summit in any shape or form Pyongyang wants, noting it is not desirable to set prerequisites for dialogue. During an interview with several global news outlets, including the Associated Press and Reuters on Thursday, Moon expressed a regret that the 2019 U.S. and North Korea Hanoi summit ended without a deal, but said the most rewarding accomplishment was the shift to dialogue and diplomacy instead of military confrontation. Moon further pointed out that Seoul and Washington have agreed on the content of the end-of-war declaration to be presented to North Korea. But he did acknowledge that striking such a declaration within his administration could be a push, and said the outcome of the March presidential election will have an impact on whether an inter-Korean summit would be possible during the remainder of his term. President Moon also said Japan's recent push for UNESCO heritage recognition for the former mines on Sado Island is regrettable. They are linked to the forced labor of Koreans during World War II. While calling on the need for sincerity from Japan, Moon pledged that the Blue House will continue to cooperate with the international community to resolve the issue. Also mentioned in Thursday's interview was an emphasis on continuing with the Korean Peninsula peace process, the Korean New Deal, and the target of net zero emissions under any administration. Calling the country's overheated real estate market the heaviest burden during his administration, Moon expressed a regret that the large-scale public housing supply should have been implemented sooner. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
In other news, consumer price index in the U.S. surged a lot more than expected in January as prices for all items rose 0.6% compared to the previous month and a stunning 7.5% on year. The on-year jump was the steepest annual price increase in the U.S. in 4 decades and way worse than economists had previously forecast. Kim Hyo-san tells us more.
The U.S. Consumer Price Index spiked 7.5% last month compared to the same period last year. This is the highest annual increase of the index, which measures the cost of dozens of everyday consumer goods since 1982. It was even higher than what Wall Street analysts had estimated. The Labor Department reported Thursday that the surge was driven by a rise in the index for all items by 0.6% in January. Fuel rose the most last month, surging 9.5% as part of a 46.5% on-year increase. Food costs jumped 0.9% for the month, or 7% over the past year. Pundits say the combination of higher food and housing prices could mean an even more rapid acceleration is underway. Against such backdrop, President Biden said Thursday that he acknowledges inflation causes real stress for Americans. However, he claimed there are also signs the U.S. will make it through this challenge. President Biden pointed to forecasts that suggest inflation will ease substantially by the end of the year. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Global oil demand looks set to exceed pre-pandemic levels this year based on the strong economic recovery in wealthier countries. The OPEC says the world's oil consumption could surpass 100 million barrels a day by the third quarter of 2022. The 13-member group also noted that it expects to see a steep rise in demand from South Korea and Japan's petrochemical industries.
Now it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into the biggest news stories in the spotlight right now. South Korean TV series are taking Netflix by storm. First, it was Squid Game, of course. Now it is the zombie thriller All of Us Are Dead. The show has been right at the top of the perch of Netflix's TV shows globally for 12 consecutive days since it hit the streaming platform on January 28th.
It's also enjoying tremendous success in other big markets, including Europe and Asia. For more on the success of the series, we are joined by Gabriela Silva, TV writer for Showbiz Cheat Sheet. Good morning, Gabriela.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So firstly, are you a fan of the series, and why do you think international audiences seem to be enjoying this so much?
I am a fan of the series, and I was greatly impressed by it. And I think a part of the reason why audiences are enjoying it is because it's a relatively fresh take on zombies. K-drama zombies are fast-paced, they ramp up the tension, the fear factor, and they create an almost inescapable environment. And All of Us Are Dead had a coming-of-age story. Instead of adults as the focal point, it's teenagers. They're still children trying to figure things out. And in the end, they can't rely on the government or adults to really survive. So it's really just a great mashup of storylines.
Now, it's only natural that people are going to compare All of Us Are Dead with Squid Game, considering they're both South Korean shows. They both cover these dark dystopian themes and came out relatively close together on Netflix. I'm presuming you have seen Squid Game, like 99.9% of the world right now. How do you think All of Us Are Dead compares to that particular show?
I think making comparisons is correct. They're both survival K-dramas that kind of test humanity or humans in the face of danger and whether or not you have what it takes to survive, as well as testing how far someone is willing to go to be able to live another day. And I think that's the essence of what both of them are, is seeing how humanity reacts to these type of situations.
But a lot of South Korean shows are enjoying success on Netflix, that they kind of share similar themes. Do you think international audiences now expect these darker issues to be explored in Korean series now? And do you think Korean series on a lighter topic will equally, with good writing, direction, and acting, would do as well as Squid Game and All of Us Are Dead?
I personally don't believe it's an expectation. It's just that I think these two K-dramas kind of open the eyes of international audiences of what K-dramas are capable of portraying on screen and with their storylines. There have been so many K-dramas that deal with these dark issues, whether it's corruption in the police force or corruption in a company or things like age gap, relationships, or things like social classes. These are topics that many K-dramas have explored on a grander scale or in minuscule storylines. And I think it's still inevitable that K-dramas that are lighter in topic, whether it's like romances or thrillers or things of comedy, they still find a way to discuss these societal issues. And they still have great success. Like Netflix's Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha, there's a character who deals with past trauma, or a worker who does not want to work in an environment where their boss cares more for money than they do of the patient's well-being.
Right, I suppose that's true. I mean, if something is good and entertaining, regardless of what themes it covers, it's still going to be very popular. I presume you're in the United States, Gabriela?
Yes, I am.
So are you and your friends, like, I don't know whether you've always been a fan of Korean content, but maybe your wider social circle. Are they watching things like Squid Game and All of Us Are Dead and then thinking, you know what, I want to watch some more Korean content, maybe movies like Old Boy or Memories of Murder? Maybe they've already seen those. But do you think they are on the lookout for quality Korean entertainment that might not necessarily be on Netflix?
Yes, I've been a fan of K-dramas for a few years now, and the conversation surrounding K-dramas has drastically changed since the popularity of Squid Game and All of Us Are Dead. And it's created, like, I have coworkers and friends who have never seen a K-drama in their life come up to me and talk to me about Squid Game in depth and in detail, and asking for recommendations of what to watch because they've been open to this new world of profound storylines and riveting content that's just not subjugated to Hollywood. And with the rise of K-content, these things become much more obvious, and people do want more to see what else South Korea has to offer, whether it's Old Boy or Memoirs of Murder, or even Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. And his comment that once you pass that 2-inch subtitle barrier, you're open to this incredible world. And that's part of what K-dramas have done, and K-content in general has done, like K-pop or BTS or wherever the case may be from Korea. So it's created like this incredible worldwide fan base that people now are accepting of.
All right. Let's look forward for more well-made K-dramas to come. Thank you so much for your time, Gabriella.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Turning now to the latest from the Beijing Winter Olympics, an up-and-coming South Korean figure skating star on Thursday put in a performance that both he and his country can be extremely proud of.
Jun-hwan finished in the top 5 in the free skating program, and no other male figure in the skater in South Korean history is ranked as high in this event in any Olympics. Kim Yeon-sing reports.
South Korean figure skater Jun-hwan on Thursday finished in 5th with a masterful performance during men's free skating event at the Beijing Winter Olympics. No other male figure skater in South Korean history has ranked as high as Cha in the Olympics. Cha is also the first South Korean figure skater in 8 years to rank among the top 5 since Kim Yeon-ah earned silver in the 2014 Sochi Winter Games. Cha performed to the opera song Turandot. Cha opened with a quadruple toe loop but failed to make the landing. Cha fell hard onto the ice, a misstep that cost him 3.8 points in the grade of execution. But he didn't let his early slip-up affect the rest of his performance. The remainder of his time on the ice was performed with grace and mastery, with his unique theatrical style lighting up the rink. He earned a total of 282.38 points, way above his previous personal best of 273.22 points, set at this year's 4 Continents Figure Skating Championships. Cha's top 5 finish is also 10 places above his previous Olympic rank, where he finished 15th at the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. The gold went to the American star Nathan Chen. Skating to Rocketman, Chen superbly executed all 5 of his quads. His unmatched performance garnered him 332.6 points from the judges. Earlier, Chen had set a world record in the short program. Yuma Kageyama and Shuma Ono of Japan bagged silver and bronze, respectively. Yuzuru Hanyu, a 2-time Olympic champion who goes by the nickname the King of Figure Skating, finished 4th. Hanyu attempted a quadruple axel, a technique that has never been successfully pulled off before, but he failed to make the landing and also fell doing his following jump, the quadruple salchow. Although Hanyu does not take home a medal, his willingness to take on the hardest jumps undoubtedly won him even more fans. Kim Yeon-sing, Arirang News.
Korean-American snowboarder Chloe Kim won gold for the US in the women's halfpipe on Thursday, making her the first woman to defend the Olympic title in that particular discipline. Despite falling during her final two runs, Kim did a flawless performance in her first, and that saw the 21-year-old garner 94 points. That's 4 points higher than the runner-up from Spain and 6 points ahead of the bronze medal winner from Japan. Kim won the gold medal at the same event at Pyeongchang 2018 when she was just 17, becoming the youngest female Olympic champion in snowboarding history. And wrapping up the luge at the Olympics, South Korea placed 13th in the last team relay competition. South Korea finished with a time of 3 minutes, 11.238 seconds. Germany took first place, sweeping gold in all 4 luge events. Germany's Natalie Geisenberger, who won her 3rd consecutive women's singles title, was part of the team, winning her 2nd gold in Beijing. Austria and Latvia took the silver and the bronze. Norway's Therese Jo Hayu won her 2nd gold medal of the Olympics on Thursday in the women's cross-country 10-kilometre classic. This follows her gold last weekend in the women's 15-kilometre skiathlon. She was closely followed by a competitor from Finland who crossed the line a mere 0.4 seconds behind. South Koreans Lee Chae-won and Lee Jin finished 72nd and 75th, respectively.
Welcome to Dialogue this week. In this corner, we invite guests from in and out of Korea to talk about a wide variety of issues ranging from culture and sports to the latest trends around the world. It's Valentine's Day on Monday, a day where lovers go to the extra mile to show their special someone how much they care by giving them chocolates, candies, and flowers. But just like last year, the day is likely to look more discreet due to the rapid spread of the COVID-19 globally. Now, following some 2 years of social distancing, lockdowns, and limited opportunities to socialize in person, many couples are thinking about how to make the day special, even though they are apart, while others are planning to spend the day together indoors. In light of the event, today we discuss how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected dating trends in and out of Korea. Since it became more difficult to meet people in person due to distancing rules, many people are now turning to mobile dating applications to look for their special someone. In fact, according to market research firm Statista, the growth of mobile dating apps is expected to jump by an average 9% a year until 2024. Also, the number of users who downloaded such apps through Google Store rose 98% from pre-pandemic levels. For a more in-depth discussion on how the pandemic has affected the dating atmosphere, today we're joined by Papri Dev, APAC Communications Lead at Tinder, and Jo-eun Kim, Assistant Professor of Social Demography at Gender at KDI School of Public Policy and Management, both via Skype. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Now, as I've mentioned, this is the second Valentine's Day since COVID-19 became a global pandemic. So our first question goes to Papri. Since you're working for Tinder, how has COVID-19 impacted the use of online dating applications over the past 2 years?
That's a good question. Actually, I think as the world went into lockdown, and that includes Korea, we saw that many young people actually turned to dating apps like ours. to be able to keep up human connections, right? In fact, we saw engagement go up hugely. And on March 29th of 2020, we in fact saw that we broke 3 billion in terms of swipes. The first time that we saw that. So people were definitely much more on the app and, were looking to connect with new people. We saw that there were more messages that were sent. Conversation rates were higher. They were about 32% more. And I think Gen Z, especially the younger generation, 18 plus and above, were using, the app a lot more. There was about 19% more messages that they kind of sent across. In fact, we saw that 60% of members came to Tinder because they felt lonely and they wanted to connect with new people.
So the pandemic has even raised the number of users for dating apps. But before, dating apps used to be a means to meet in real life. But as the pandemic mandated various degrees of lockdown, it took many things online. To that, people have rather quickly adapted to getting to know people virtually, which brought about demand for more holistic profiles. So, Papri, as for Tinder, what features have been added to meet the trend, and how have users responded to the changes?
Right. I think what's happened is that, when Tinder first started, the swipe kind of exploded onto the world, and you could swipe on somebody, match, and then you would kind of go, into real life and meet that person for a coffee or a drink. But now the younger generation that lives a lot more, more of a digital life are much more comfortable kind of, doing virtual dates. So we had video dating that came up during the pandemic. It's a feature called face-to-face that allowed people to make the first move and meet up with each other virtually. In fact, we also found music was a big way in which, the younger generation loves to connect. So we've got something called music mode where you can just listen to the anthem that they have on their profile, and that could kind of just give you a sense of what their vibe is, right? In the recent past, we've also kind of moved beyond the swipe and, opened up new space on our app called Explore, where you can actually come and meet somebody who has a shared interest with you. So you could very directly just go into, a place a section where you could meet coffee lovers, or you could meet somebody, who has the same kind of passion for outdoors as you do, or even food. So there's a lot more that's happening within the app right now, that's allowing people to kind of get to know each other more virtually before they even consider an in real life date.
Well, it seems like a very helpful and a safe change considering the current circumstances. Now, on a broader note, let's turn to Professor Kim to get a more local view on things. Professor Kim, how has COVID-19 affected the dating scene here in South Korea?
Well, in South Korea, even before COVID-19, dating was declining. And in fact, recent data suggests that COVID-19 may have exacerbated this trend. Limited opportunity for social gathering means that young people have limited opportunity to meet new people. And being surrounded by disease, death, and financial insecurity also takes an emotional toll on young adults, which makes them to be less motivated in relationship. And according to a recent social survey conducted in South Korea, the proportion of young adults aged 25 to 35 who reported that they're in relationship increased from 55, who are not in romantic relationship, increased from 55% in 2018 and 62% in 2020. So in 2020 survey, almost 78% of these singles did not have a chance to meet people. Interestingly, the vast majority of singles in Korea are satisfied with their single life and not actively seeking for a date, which is in stark contrast to the surge in online dating app usage.
Well, the drop actually seems to have been affected largely by the pandemic as well. But Professor, more time online also means more behavior associated with dating has also gone online. We now have Gen Z users reportedly making up the vast majority of the dating scene. What does your research say about the influence going online has had on the dating behavior of young adults?
Well, there are lot of interesting research that shows that how online dating is quite different from conventional dating behavior. So on online dating, people tend to be more discriminatory based on appearance, and they tend to be more reckless in terms of their comments, which often leads to cyberbullying and sexual harassment. However, there's no conclusive evidence that online dating changed dating patterns. In fact, my study suggests that what matters is not so much about the online activity per se, but the quality of online content that you consume. So I find that among Korean men, young Korean men who spend more time online is more likely to report that they're not in relationship, and they're likely to be less interested in marriage. So it is possible that these people just have more time and spend more time online, but it is also possible that these anti-dating and marriage people may selectively consume information that reinforce their anti-dating behavior. So in Korea, there is a lot of tension between men and women online over gender issues, and there is a lot of misogynistic and misogynistic comments and ideas spread in multiple forums and platforms, which often garner a lot of attention and spark an online gender war. So according to my study, the online gender war, which has started since 2015, has actually reduced marriage rates and intentions to marry in South Korea.
Well, that's kind of sad, but let's turn back to the dating crisis here in South Korea later as we speak. But before that, I heard about a phenomenon called Dating Sunday, where we see a tendency for people using dating apps to increase on the first Sunday of the new year, because many people revive their spirit to fall in love again in the new year. But with COVID-19 causing more people to spend more time at home and with lesser things to do in general, would you say there are certain periods where there is a significant increase or decrease in user activity, Papri?
Yes, as you said, I think Dating Sunday is kind of a new phenomenon, especially in Asia. I mean, it's inherently been something, that has been there in the West. But I think more and more amongst younger people now, we are seeing there's understanding and, they want to kind of, get in on these new trends, right? And Dating Sunday is actually the first Sunday of the year, as you pointed out, and we've seen actually online activity increase around Dating Sunday. It's not just Dating Sunday, but around Valentine's Day, and even sometimes, before back to school seasons, or even before, say, Halloween, right? Like, I think the reason is that while younger people are coming to dating apps, not just to find that one person, but their intent is to kind of make a number of different connections and, to connect with somebody with a shared interest or passion.
Now, going back to the dating crisis, the BBC reported that Tinder's data showed an increase of some 19% in messages sent per day compared to before the pandemic, and conversations are 32% longer. But nonetheless, here in South Korea, we're dealing with the so-called dating crisis. So, Professor Kim, can you explain what this phenomenon is and what impact does it have on our society?
So the term dating crisis refers to the phenomenon where dating is no longer considered a social norm and is even despised among young adults. In fact, the dating issue may have a broad socioeconomic impact on Korean society because it leads to fertility crisis. South Korea has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world, and total fertility rates has fallen below 1, which means that the Korean woman on average have less than 1 baby during their reproductive years. In Korea, where practically all births occur within marital relationship, no dating, no marriage, and no babies. And as well as recognized, the fertility crisis is tied to the pension and healthcare system, as well as the possibility of political conflict between young and old over resources.
Well, it's very concerning that the dating crisis is also going to affect the nation's population eventually. But not to take away from the Valentine's Day spirit, but this dating crisis seems to be something that could be universal in varying degrees depending on the country and culture. Papri, do you think this is reflected in Tinder usage as well?
I think People's desire for connection is not going to go anywhere. You know, we always want to meet new people, make new connections, you know, move beyond our, you know, small social circles, especially as we kind of stay more at home. And I think Tinder's constantly looking for ways to be able to give people, you know, the ability to kind of connect more online. And that's how we kind of look at it when we are developing new features, right? I think our members generally come to Tinder not just to kind of find a romantic relationship, but, you know, find maybe even a travel buddy. I mean, we hear stories that are quite incredible that come out of countries where, you know, people have just found, you know, somebody in the neighborhood and, you know, they've kind of become friends, or, you know, they've kind of even struck up a conversation and, you know, decided to kind of open up a business together. So I think, I mean, you know, I think young people are changing how they define dating. And, you know, it's not just romantic, but it's also social discovery that they're kind of looking for. And that's the need that, you know, Tinder kind of fulfills.
Well, that's some good news that, you know, Tinder could be used in other kinds of connections to find more relationships other than, you know, being lovers. But before we let you go, Professor Kim, so how do you think we should deal with this dating crisis here in South Korea? And do you expect things are going to get better after the COVID-19 pandemic?
So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, dating crisis has been ongoing before COVID-19 in South Korea. For that reason, there is little reason to believe that dating crisis will just stop after the pandemic. And we have to approach this from multiple perspectives, but I would like to point out two things. One is gender issue, and another is work issue. The gender issue relates to the large ideological gap between men and women about gender issues. And I think it's time where both men and women make an effort to engage in healthy discussion and avoid gender hatred dialogue. So more agreement on gender issues could promote partnership in Korea. And another thing is the culture of overwork. That's another issue that hinders young adults' dating behavior in South Korea. South Korea has recorded one of the longest work hours among high-income countries, and young adults often report that they avoid dating simply because they are too exhausted from working. And scholars find that the culture of overwork also hinders emergence of egalitarian partnerships because expectation of overwork tend to disproportionately affect men, and men often find it difficult to accept this idea that they should engage in egalitarian behavior, such as increased domestic participation. So overall, it is important to note that we need to take a look at this issue, the Korean dating situation, from a variety of angles.
All right. Well, this was a very interesting topic, but I'm afraid we will have to wrap up at this point. Thank you so much for making time for us, Papri and Professor Kim. Let's hope the situation gets better so that more people can enjoy future Valentine's Days. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
South Korea's numerous ride-hailing services now include a fleet of self-driving cars. From this week, people in one of Seoul's districts can use these kinds of vehicles to get from A to B. Our Shin Ye-eun went to check them out and files this report.
There are many ways people can get around in Seoul, from subways to buses and taxis. But from Thursday, visitors to Sangam-dong have a new option: self-driving vehicles. From last year, Seoul Metropolitan City has been test running its first autonomous vehicle hailing service. Finally, from this week, it has started commercializing this service to visitors in the Sangam-dong neighborhood of Western Seoul's Mapogu district. There are a total of 4 driverless vehicles available. They all follow 2 designated routes, picking up and dropping off passengers at specific locations around the neighborhood. Right now, I'm calling a driverless vehicle to go to DMC station. If you see right here, I can choose where I'll get on and off using this app called Tap. The app then calls the nearest vehicle. Regardless of how far you go and how many people you're riding with, each ride costs 2,000 won, which is a little over $1. The car moves by itself at almost all times. It's able to sense traffic lights and recognize pedestrians when turning right.
안녕하세요. 저는 A킷입니다. 면허 딴 지 한 달 정도 됐어요. 초보 운전자라 해서 언제까지나 겁먹고 집에만 있을 순 없죠? 여러분을 안전하게 모시는 베스트 드라이버가 되기 위해 저는 오늘도 열심히 달립니다.
But a safety driver is also at the wheel to take over in case of an emergency or when going through a child protection zone. As Thursday was the first day since the service launched, not many people knew about it. But those who did said they were willing to try it out.
I had no idea that we could use these cars, but I like to try because it'd be convenient to move around Sangam-dong with this service.
At first, I was a bit scared that I might end up in a car accident, but I think it'd be worth a shot with my friends because it's fascinating to be in a car without a driver.
Seoul City is aiming to expand the number of self-driving vehicles to 12, including one driverless bus, by the end of December. By 2026, the city hopes to run more than 50 autonomous vehicles in Sangam-dong alone. 신예은, Arirang News.
Now we're going to take a look at what's going on around the world, and for that we have our Eason J joining us live from Arirang's newsroom. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
So, Sing-jae, let's start off with the ongoing Russia-Ukraine tensions. Russia began its military drills with Belarus, which Moscow are calling ordinary drills, but others say it's just further preparation for a possible invasion into Ukraine.
That's right. So Russia did begin its military drills in Belarus on Thursday as planned. Now, footage released by the Russian Defense Ministry showed tanks and missile launchers being used in the drills and military jets in the air at an unidentified location. Now, reports say Russia is expected to have 30,000 troops in the country, Su-35 fighter jets, S-400 air defense systems, and nuclear-capable Iskander missiles. Now, in response, Ukraine launched its own war games on Thursday. Ukraine's defense minister said that the drills will include Javelin anti-tank missiles recently provided to Kiev by the U.S. Meanwhile, the UK government now has the power to impose tough new sanctions against Russia after legislation was passed in Parliament on Thursday. The UK can now impose sanctions on Russian businesses and individuals in a wide range of economic and strategically significant sectors. Now, footage released by the Libyan Prime Minister's office showed the Prime Minister escaped an assassination attempt in the early hours of Thursday. Now, a government source revealed he escaped unharmed despite a number of shots being fired. The attackers fled the scene and an investigation is underway. The assassination attempt comes as the country's eastern-based parliament appointed a new prime minister and called for the interim incumbent to step down. Although there's no evidence the two events are linked. Now, Libya's division continues to deepen between two warring parallel administrations that governed from 2014 until a unity government, and the current leader was installed last year as part of a UN-backed peace plan. Now, French virologist Luc Montagnier, who won a Nobel Prize for co-discovering HIV, passed away at the age of 89 on Thursday. Years before the onset of the AIDS epidemic, Montagnier made significant discoveries concerning the nature of viruses and contributed to understanding how retroactive viruses can alter the genetic information of host organisms. He was the director of the World Foundation of AIDS Research and Prevention in Paris. And he also sparked controversy in 2020 by saying that he believes the COVID-19 virus was created in a Chinese lab. And now finally, Switzerland is set to vote on Sunday to become the first country in the world to ban medical testing on animals. The vote comes as animal rights groups gathered enough support to push for a referendum in the country, which, by the way, hosts a huge pharmaceutical sector. Now, according to the government statistics, more than 550,000 animals died in lab tests in 2020 in Switzerland. This includes 400,000 mice, nearly 4,600 dogs, 1,500 cats, and 1,600 horses. Now, drug companies warn that if such a law does pass, it could lead to the end of new drug development.
Good morning. Hope you're enjoying warmer conditions this week, and it looks to be another day with warmer than norms across Korea. But it's another day with a sub-zero start, so be aware of wide gaps in readings between lows and highs today. But conditions will ensure pollution levels remain in the bad category in most of western regions and Daegu. So please have a face mask that helps to filter ultrafine dust today. The air quality looks to be even worse tomorrow. A freezing start for most parts, and daily lows in most areas are similar to slightly lower than the same time yesterday, kicking off at 2 degrees Celsius over in Busan. Well, feeling like early March in some parts, including Gwangju and Busan, topping out at 13 and 12 degrees Celsius respectively this afternoon. But despite a fair amount of sunshine, skylines will be covered with dust in the west. The warming trend continues through the weekend, and another cold snap arrives next week, along with a nationwide wintry mix next Monday. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all we have for now. We'll be back at 8 a.m. Korea time on Monday for our next edition of New Day at Arirang. We appreciate you tuning in. I'm Kim Mo-kyan.
And I'm Mark Broom. Have a wonderful weekend, Mo-kyan, and to all our viewers as well. Thank you as always for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.
Everyone knows I'm passionate. Know why? Look at how passionate Koreans are. And you know I'm fast. Don't blink. Korean move fast too. I'm creative on the pitch. People say I'm smart. Just look how smart Korea is. I aim to be spectacular for the fans. Why am I so fun? Is it because Korea is so much fun? Visit Korea and find out for yourself. See you there. This is my career. What's yours?